My father raised his glass at Thanksgiving not to give thanks, but to tell the room some children are a blessing, and others are just a burden. I smiled back at the man who treated me as a ghost in his own home, and told him I'd just signed a lease 2,000 miles away. The laughter died, cut off at the throat. They thought that moment was my breaking point. They didn't know it was the moment I stopped caring what they thought. I grew up in a home where value was a currency, and I was never in credit. From the curb, our house in Columbus was a portrait of normalcy. Tidy lawns, friendly neighbors, autumn leaves that burned gold against a blue sky. Inside, the entire emotional economy was based on my brother, Ethan. He was the investment that always paid off. His athletic medals were displayed like crown jewels in a glass case, dusted weekly. My academic ribbons were tucked into a yearbook on a shelf, forgotten. My father's hand would land on Ethan's shoulder with a weight that felt like an anvil of approval. When I brought home a perfect score on a math contest, Dad would nod and say, "Try not to outshine your brother, Lena." A lifetime of paper cuts, each one whispered. My mother wasn't mean, just a master of quiet retreat. She'd fuss with the curtains when tension thickened the air, humming tunelessly to fill the silence she was too afraid to break. Her avoidance wounded me more deeply than my father's dismissal, because it taught me my comfort was negotiable, expendable. The garage became my sanctuary. It smelled of gasoline, old wood, and possibility. While the living room TV blared with sports commentary and Ethan's triumphs, the garage was mine. I tinkered with old engines, coded simple programs on a second-hand laptop, and learned that circuits either worked or they didn't. There was no favoritism. My grandfather was my only true ally. He'd visit on Sundays, bringing the smell of peppermint and a patience that filled the room. He'd peer at my latest project and say, "You've got a mind that sees the seams in things, Lena. That's a gift." He said it like a secret, knowing our home wasn't a place where different was celebrated. By my 18th birthday, I'd mastered the art of being unobtrusive and capable, the two traits my father found least offensive. When I was accepted into a prestigious tech program on the West Coast, he glanced up from his tablet. "That far, huh?" he grunted. "Hope you've got a plan." I did. I saved tips from my waitressing job, bought a one-way ticket, and left with a single suitcase and a determination no one had toasted. I used to think physical distance would force him to see me, but you can't make someone look at what they've decided is invisible. That Thanksgiving, when he lifted his glass and labeled me a burden, a final quiet peace clicked into place inside me. He would never see me, but I was done waiting for his permission to exist. For a heartbeat after his toast, the dining room seemed to warp, the air itself turning stiff and heavy. Ethan chuckled into his drink. His children glanced around, sensing a joke they weren't old enough to understand. My mother's gaze was locked on her plate, her knife tracing the same groove in the china. I should have felt rage. I should have wept. That's the reaction their dynamic fed on. Instead, I felt a profound, unsettling calm. I lifted my own glass, met my father's eyes, and smiled. A genuine one, not the tight-lipped version I'd practiced for years. "Good thing I just got my own place 2,000 miles away," I said, letting the words hang soft and sharp. "You won't have to make room for me anymore." Forks halted. A glass chimed against a plate. Even the kids fell silent. My father's expression didn't crumple in regret. It hardened in surprise. For the first time ever, I had deviated from the role he'd written for me. Ethan just stared, baffled, as if the supporting character had just walked off the stage. I placed my napkin neatly on the table and stood. "Thank you for the meal," I said, my voice level. My mother breathed my name, a faint, fearful sound. But I wasn't leaving to punish them. I was leaving because I finally saw the seating chart of that family with total, brutal clarity. Outside, the cold air was a shock to the lungs. The house looked exactly as it always had. Yet now it seemed strangely small, like a model I'd outgrown. Muffled voices seeped through the walls. First surprise, then irritation, then the familiar rhythm of dismissal. I was being framed as overly emotional, difficult. But no one opened the door to call me back. Driving through the sleeping suburbs of Columbus, memories unspooled. Ethan's birthdays with custom-made cakes, mine with a store-bought pie. Dad never missing a single one of Ethan's meets, but forgetting the showcase where I presented my software. Mom always smoothing things over, never standing up. The pattern wasn't hidden. I had just finally stopped hoping it would change. By the time I checked into my hotel, the ache in my chest had crystallized into something clear and solid. Leaving that dinner wasn't an act of defeat. It was the first firm line of a boundary they never imagined I'd draw. I pulled out my phone and texted my grandfather. "In town. Can I see you tomorrow?" His reply was instant. "Always. My kitchen, 9 a.m. For the first time all night, I took a full deep breath. Lying in the dark, the phrase "just a burden" echoing, I felt an unfamiliar surge. Not pain but purpose. They believed I was empty space. They were about to discover what I could construct from that very freedom. We met at his favorite cafe. The kind with mismatched chairs and the rich scent of brewing coffee. He was already there, silver hair bright under the warm lights. He didn't ask for a report. He simply took my hand and said, "You look weary, Lena. Not in your body, in your soul. The dam broke." We talked for hours about my life in Portland, my job, the apartment I was making my own. When I showed him a picture of the round oak table I'd bought, he nodded. "No head seat. I like it." Only then did he ask, "So what did he say?" I told him. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, they were glistening. "You were worthy of better from your first breath," he said. That validation from him sank deeper than any insult ever could. Back at his house, surrounded by the scent of lemon polish and old paper, I noticed the stack of envelopes on his desk, bills, statements, the quiet paperwork of aging alone. I saw how many decisions my father had gradually absorbed from him, all in the name of helping. A quiet resolve settled in me. I wouldn't abandon him like I'd been abandoned. Returning to Portland felt like stepping into a sanctuary I'd built with my own hands. The coastal mist felt like a cleansing breath. I didn't just live in my apartment, I curated it. I painted a wall a bold color, filled shelves with books I loved, bought a single beautiful chair just for me. I constructed a life one deliberate choice at a time. At work, my focus was rewarded. I led projects that required deep concentration, and I delivered. I didn't post about it online, hungry for validation from the wrong people. I let the quality of the work speak for itself. That December, I hosted a solstice gathering. I invited the friend who helped me move, the neighbor who shared her soup when I was sick, the mentor who believed in me. We were a patchwork group, but when we sat around my round table, laughing under the string lights, a knot in my chest I'd carried for decades finally loosened. That December, I hosted a solstice gathering. I invited the friend who helped me move, the neighbor who shared her soup when I was sick, the mentor who believed in me. We were a patchwork group, but when we sat around my round table, laughing under the string lights, a knot in my chest I'd carried for decades finally loosened. I didn't know then that a photo from that night, me radiant, surrounded by my chosen family, would eventually find its way back to Ohio and shake the foundations of the very people who claimed I took up too much room. The call came 2 days after New Year's. My father's number flashed on my screen. I answered. "The entire neighborhood is talking about you," he snapped, no greeting. "About me? Those pictures. Your little party. Your aunt shared some poetic caption about Lena building her own feast. Do you have any idea how this makes us look?" There it was. Not concern for my happiness. Anxiety over their image. "I didn't post anything," I said calmly. "You didn't have to," he shot back. "It's all over social media. Your mother can't even get her groceries without someone asking what happened." "Maybe that's a question you should have answered for people a long time ago," I replied. The line hissed with silence. Then low and venomous. "You humiliated this family. I didn't expect that." They flew to Portland the following weekend. Their knock on my door felt like a drumbeat. I opened it to the two architects of my childhood loneliness. My mother offered a fragile smile. My father's eyes immediately scanned my living room, hunting for flaws. "Cozy," he managed. I didn't linger. "Dinner's ready." My round oak table stood centered in the room, lit by candles and the rainy city glow. 3 identical chairs. My father noticed the absence of a head seat. He said nothing. We ate. My mother praised the food with a thin voice. My father chewed in stern quiet. His eyes kept drifting to my gallery wall, photos of me with friends on hiking trails at work events. None with them. I offered no explanation. Halfway through he finally spoke. "You've done well for yourself." I set my wine glass down. "I have. And you didn't think to share any of it with us? I met his gaze. You never showed interest in hearing it. He looked ready to argue, but then his shoulders slumped slightly. Perhaps we didn't always get it right. The understatement hung in the air. My mother's eyes welled up. Lena, we never wanted you to feel unseen. I didn't soften. Not yet. Wanting didn't prevent it from happening. My father's face tightened. We supported Ethan. He needed more guidance. He needed more because you gave him everything, I said. And I learned to build my own foundations. His mouth opened then closed. For the first time in my life he looked unsure, diminished. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated the facts I'd carried for a lifetime. You called me a burden, but I built a life 2,000 miles from your shadow. I built my own table, my own circle, my own quiet strength. He flinched, a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in his veneer. Then he whispered something I never thought I'd hear. I didn't know how to love a daughter who didn't need saving. My mother reached a trembling hand across the table. Can we start over? Even slowly. I leaned back, the candlelight flickering between us. I'm not coming back to Ohio, I said. But you are welcome here in my world if you come as guests. Not as judges. My father gave a single stiff nod. We can try. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a first hesitant step across a line I had drawn in permanent ink. When they left, the closing door sounded like a period, not an exclamation mark. I walked to my window, the cool glass against my forehead, and understood. I hadn't just walked away from that Thanksgiving table. I had authored new rules. And for the first time he had chosen to read them. The weeks that followed were peaceful. My apartment was mine again. No silent judgments, no weighted glances. My grandfather called. He talked about the visit, he said. He was thoughtful, not angry. I watched the rain streak down my window. I don't know what happens next, I admitted. You don't need to, he replied. You just need to keep choosing the life you've designed. Choosing myself meant simple things. Cooking a meal just for me. Saying no without an elaborate excuse. Accepting a compliment at work without deflecting it. I was no longer the girl in the garage, waiting for a spotlight that was never wired for her. One evening, setting one place at my round table, I paused. This table began as a symbol of defiance, a border I erected. Now it was something softer. A testament. A promise that regardless of who did or did not sit at it, this was a place where I belonged wholly. As night fell over the bay, a deep stillness settled within me. Not because my family had transformed, but because I finally had. Some children spend their lives seeking approval. Others learn to become their own source of light. If you've ever had to construct your world from the ground up, tell me your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought. There are more chapters like this to come, and you won't want to miss them.